Okay, so welcome back to Race, Place, and Inequality. Um, Today or this week, you should be reading about race, place, and Black placemaking. Then you have place a short introduction. You were supposed to read that, and then I'm going to kind of expound on a lot of the thoughts and concepts that was put forth there, just to kind of introduce you to the notion of place. Place isn't something that's often talked about in sociology, as well as some of the other disciplines. Place is typically a concept that stays within geography, right? So geographers as well as um, geographers as well as urbanists tend to kind of study place, right? However, place is something that's very much interdisciplinary. So there's a place for place in sociology and anthropology and African American studies, and political science and urban geography and demography, and so many different sciences. And so I do think it's important that we have a broad understanding of place. And then in specifically Black placemaking. Black placemaking is very new. Now, place in sociology has been around at least since the early part of the 21st century, so the 2000s. Definitely place has been something that's been talked about at least since the 1950s and 60s, but particularly in sociology, you kind of see elements of it a little bit in like the 80s and 90s, but definitely in the 2000s, a place, I think it's called a place for place in sociology, or a place in sociology, or something like that. The big article that just kind of really made a really good, or did a really good job at making a case for that. And since then, you start to see place and placemaking be more significant in that discipline. And so, so we talk about that, and then we go into Black placemaking. And Black placemaking is very new, and so I think that that will be a good place to kind of help us transition into a lot of the readings that we're going to talk about, and specifically our textbook, which is Spatializing Blackness. So Spatializing Blackness kind of deals with space and place, but I think it's fine. You can talk about Spatializing Blackness in a space class or a place class. It doesn't matter. It's definitely purposeful either way. So yeah. So that's what we're going to do. And this is for August 30th and for September 1st. This is when you should do these readings, and when you can, you should watch this lecture as well as do the PowerPoints. Now we will go a little bit into this idea of place. All right. So let's see. Place. Looking at this intro of place. Some of this comes from your reading. Some of this comes from other readings that kind of parallel this reading and extend the thoughts on this reading. One in particular, how we get place from space. How to get place from space. Yes. Place. Place is, like race, socially constructed. All right. Operating as a socially constructed operation. And it includes the ways in which people and groups interact with each other. Also, how people and groups interact with institutionalized structures, how they interact with the government, how they interact with the economic structures, how they want people to see them, and how they see themselves. These are the things that place helps to create and helps us to understand. How do people use area? How do people use land? How do people use their environment, their social environment, their physical environment to make sense of their interaction with themselves and their interactions with others. And place is something that can be used anywhere. You can use place anywhere. You can use place is as a way of helping to understand sociology or social interaction. You can use place in helping to understand political science. I think I said this a while or a second ago. You can use it in so many different disciplines. So it travels through disciplines and it benefits those disciplines as it travels through. A lot like critical race theory. I know critical race theory is something that is under attack. Some people may say it's under attack. Some people agree, some people don't agree with critical race theory. But like critical race theory, you can find critical race theory, especially in sociology, but sociology, law, education, political science, very interdisciplinary, place, same thing. And so typically, historically, when we think about place, we think about a nation, where someone lives. The first way in which you identify as a place, you would say, where are you from? If you ask somebody where are you from, and they tell you, what are some things that immediately come to your mind? Why do you ask somebody where they're from? Either before you really get to know them or after. And the reason why is because there are characteristics associated with place that we want to hurry up and put somebody in so that that can gauge the conversation. And there's nothing wrong with that per se. I guess because we all do it. But it would be kind of cool if maybe we just didn't know and we just interacted with people how we want without having to feel like we need to allow their identity or orientation to then inform the conversation. So just for example, I may not know you. Oh, this is such and such. Oh, okay, hi, such and such. Where are you from? Oh, I'm from Florida. Okay, immediately my mind goes, okay, if this person is from Florida, okay, they're from the South, they did this, that. These are the things that we can talk about. This is what I know about Florida. Cool, cool, cool. If they say I'm from California, oh, okay, California. What do I know about California? Hollywood, beaches, blah, 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 blah. Okay, this can lead this into this kind of conversation, right? So there are place identified characteristics that we all hold all the time. What country are you from? From America? Oh, if you've ever been outside of the country. Oh, you're from America. Okay, you. Or we could be having a conversation. You might be saying some interesting things. Oh, I like this. You know, yeah, I really enjoy being around people. You know, I like loud stuff, you know, traffic. I just don't feel like I'm really alive if I'm not in traffic, if I can't. Well, oh, I didn't get my driver's license till I was maybe 22, 23. So then I may say, where are you from? I'm from New York. Oh, that's why. So we use place to satisfy our inquiries or to inform our inquiries, right? And the first way in which that's done is you ask somebody where they're from or where they were born. Because place is connected to nativity. Place is connected to nation and nationality. So we are born into these relationships that place tends to have us in. And there is a bond that happens between people who are born in a similar place or in the same place, right? When I first came to UNF, I had a colleague who emailed me and said, oh, it's good to have another Floridian, right? And in the midst. Somebody who is a native of Florida. I'm a native of Florida, Jacksonville specifically. So they said, always good to have another native Floridian here. Why did the person say that? Because there is a bond of place, right? There's a placeable bonding, and this placeable bonding is fundamental in our human experience and how we interact with each other. And sometimes what can be seen as just a space, undifferentiated space, which means you really can't tell the difference between one thing or another, it's just large space, becomes place. Well, what's the difference between space and place? Space is environmental, place is human characteristics applied to that environment. So this space where you are, the south side of Jacksonville, the place is a college campus, and the place becomes even more dynamic with the students, with the band, with the football team, with the teachers, with the excitement, the parades, and all of these different things. It now becomes place. As we get to know it better, as we put value on it, as we put a mascot, and as the teams win, and you know, as the university has more money and has more resources, now we can start to add value to this place, space. And the value that we added to, or the value added, can transform a space into a place. And so again, what begins as space with no regard, no distinction, can become place with added value. And so how to get from space to place? Place is an important part of our lives. It is an important component of our lives. As soon as we're born, as soon as we come into the world, we're coming into a place. A family place, a geographic place, all right, an economic place. We're coming into it, and then society places us in various identities. It places you in a certain racial identity. It places you in a gender identity. It places you in as you get older, a sexual category. So place is the basic component of our lives. We are always in place. We're never not in place. Now you can be out of place. We will read a piece called Bodies Out of Place by one of my mentors, Dr. Barbara Combs. You can be out of place, but you're never not in a place. You're in a place one way or another from the time you're born to the time you die. So when you live, you're living this localized experience. And in this localized experience, the first thing you need to know is, what is my place? Where do I fit? Not just geographically. We're talking about identity. We can talk about career. You just talk about in college, when you're a freshman, if you're not a freshman. If you're a freshman, you come to college for the first time, and you see the classrooms and you see people, especially if you come to a school where maybe you might be the only person that you know right now. So you go into this place, and as you're going into this place, you have to know, how do I fit in? Where's my subgroup? Where's my organization? That I can then come in and then make a place for myself in this collegiate space. So that's typically the first thing we think about anywhere we go. What is the meaning for me being here? How can I add value? What can I gain from being here? So in other words, we are not just in places, but we are places. We are Our bodies are place-based vehicles or place-based spaces, if you will. Like, we are these places. Our bodies are these places. Our bodies inevitably become place-based. Why? Because we're not just walking around hollow. There's an added value to us, whether it comes from our intelligence, or our talents, skills, reason. All of these factors help even us as these space creatures to become place. A place where maybe a friend can come to you and seek counsel or advice. Going to the next slide. The living body is central to Casey's discussion of place as a body, of place as a body is always necessarily living in a place and living a place. Notice Casey said living in a place, but you're also living out that place. You're not just living on a college campus, you're living out your college dream. So you embody the place. So you're living the college experience. If you were to go down to Mardi Gras, you're going to Mardi Gras, but you're also living out the Mardi Gras experience. You're living out what this place means. Places, I think this place is just so fascinating. The living body becomes the place. And bodies and places integrate and interact and interanimate with one another. So you can become a place for someone. Trying to think of if somebody says, oh, I like you. If somebody's throwing a party and they say, yo, you gotta be here. We need you here because you're the life of the party. And telling somebody they're the life of the party is exactly what living a place is. They're not saying you're the party, we have to come to you, but we're going to this space where we're having a party, but then you also bring party with you. So you're living out being a party. So we not only embody a place, we become a place. Just as there are no places without the bodies that sustain and vivify them, so there are no lived bodies without the places they inhabit and traverse. So place outside and place inside, our bodies as place inside of places, those coincide, those good work hand in hand. You can't have a place without bodies because bodies add value, bodies have meaning. As human beings, we add meaning. If we didn't add meaning, then everything's just kind of there. So bodies add meaning to a place, or life adds meaning to a place. It doesn't necessarily have to be a human body, but any type of body, life bodies, adds meaning to a place. If there was no life somewhere, who would really want to visit it? What kind of value does it really have if there's no life? That's probably why bodies are always trying to place themselves in places. First to go to the moon, first to go to Mars, first to go to the sky, first to go to the moon. We're constantly trying to put our bodies into spaces for meaning purposes. And so we must embody place. And there are no lived bodies without the places they inhabit and traverse. So anybody who is listening, anybody who is alive is in a place. Place can't be anything without you, but you are not something without place, because everybody here inhabits a place in some way. You inhabit a place. So you're nothing without place. Place is nothing without you. And places are created by human beings through some mark or, again, some sign of human presence. So having to be somewhere, having to live somewhere, to breathe somewhere, to make life somewhere, to experience society somewhere makes a place. A wilderness in itself is placeless. If you go somewhere and there's just nothing there, no life forms, no nothing, it's placeless. It has no human center. But that's why I personally use the notion of life. Because I believe you can have a place without a human. I think that's a human-centered ideology. Oh, there's nothing has value unless I'm there or a human is there. No, places humans not that have value. It's okay, they don't want you there. The animals don't want you there, you don't have to be there. So I do think it's important, or I do think that typically human beings are the ones that are always trying to insert ourselves into people's places and assume that it is nothing until we get there. Going back to race, well, that's how white people felt about sub-Saharan Africa. Well, this place is a jungle, it's uncivilized. Not until we get here can we make it civilized, bring them into modernity. Well, these people have been living very well for the past thousands of years. So place can be a place without you or without a person there. That's my argument. You know, Casey may say something different. So what I would like for you to do as an activity before we go into the next part, I would like for you to watch this link. And after you do that, I want you to pull up a document, pull up a piece of paper, and I want you to type a paragraph or two addressing the following ideas. How do you see elements of place in this song? And give me details from the lecture to explain why these are seen as elements of the place in your song. Very simple. You can write as long as you want or as short as you want, but just know if you write short, it better be good. And it's kind of difficult to say everything that needs to be said in one or two sentences. I don't think I've ever done that. But if you want to try, you can. But if you're not answering the question, if you're not really giving this some serious thought, you may not receive the grade that you're looking for. Right? So how do you see elements of place in this song? And provide details from the lecture to explain your thoughts. So the paper should be double-spaced, Times New Roman 12 font, and the only information that should be at the top is your name, name of the class, and the title of the essay, but that's optional. All right. So as we continue to the last reading, Black placemaking. So we've talked about race, we've talked about place, the introduction of place. Black placemaking is very significant. It's a very significant piece. And Black placemaking is fairly new. It's a fairly new concept in that it allows for us to take the larger ideas around place and making place and how places get created and allows us to racialize it and show the distinctions between how racial groups influence and add value to spaces and how spaces add value, well, I don't want to say add value, and how spaces influence the experiences of people in those places. But in order to get into Black placemaking, there's a couple things we got to talk about first. Motion. Another key element of place is motion, moving. You got to be able to move in and out of spaces. And the moving in and out of spaces and the frequency in which that's done and why it's done and how it's done and what is left behind when it's done helps us to understand place and how value is added to a space. So motion is key to our understanding of how place and body interaction, how those work hand in hand. Place is not monolithic, it's dynamic, it's static. And place, when added value, should encourage movement, some kind of movement, some kind of motion. This is why migration is so important. I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about migration at some point in this semester. But migration is extremely important because movement in and out of spaces adds value to a place. Right? The United States would not be, the modern United States would not be what it is had it not been for the explorers migrating from one place to another and deciding to stay. So whether you're talking about exploration, whether you're talking about, like, for example, the Great Migration, where Black folks from the South moved to the North and added value to urban cities and shaped the landscape of urban cities. And now you see this reverse migration back to the South, where now the South is becoming more urban. The South is becoming the center, the core for commerce, for research, for American thought, American politics. South is now very important in that way. And so you see that with a large reverse migration of people being priced out of the North, being priced out of the bigger cities and moving to what's seen as smaller cities, which are now becoming bigger cities in the South. So movement and motion and migration adds value to a space or adds value to that place. And even when the body stays in place, sometimes it changes the position of some of its parts. So even if you were to stay, I'll give a good example. I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. I grew up on the north side of Jacksonville, Florida. So I don't know if any of you are from here, or those who may be from here may not be, but I grew up in the Moncrief, Lake Forest, Edgewood area, right? My experience in this place, right? It's considered a place, it's a city with people, with vibrant movement and everything's going on. So I experienced this place from birth till graduating high school. And then I spent 1 year of college. I went to community college here for 1 year and then went off to a 4-year college. And so my experience of living in Jacksonville as a student, as a young boy and growing into a young man, it was one way of how I understood it. I was in one position. Then I went off to college and did all these different things and got a Ph.D. and lived in other cities. And now coming back to Jacksonville, I'm in a totally different position than what I was in before I left the first time. And now coming back, the place looks totally different. I know the streets, I know the buildings, I know UNF. I hadn't been to UNF in almost 20 years since a prom that I attended when I was in high school. Well, I think early college. She was a senior in high school. It was my first year in college. A prom that I attended at UNF, but I didn't know much else about UNF. But yeah, the city looks totally different because now I'm an adult. I have responsibilities. I have a job, a career, all these different things happening in the city that I did not have before. So I'm in a totally different position, which makes the place look different for me. Not necessarily physically. Some things have been built, obviously, but not really physically as much as the feeling of now what this place means. Why? Because my position changed in the place. Bodies move within places or between places, and in so doing helps constitute places, whilst places constitute these bodies. So as bodies are moving around in places, moving as you move from city to city, or from one apartment to another, or from an apartment to a house, or as you move from a freshman to a sophomore to a junior to a senior inside of UNF, you're giving credence to wherever you are. You as a student, as you're moving throughout your college experience, you're adding value to UNF. And then in turn, UNF adds value to you when you get a degree. Now you're a college educated person, and then you may be able to go out and get a certain type of job or demand a certain type of income or whatever. So bodies move within places and between places. And in so that helps places kind of validate bodies. Bodies validate places and places validate bodies. There's a beautiful kind of symbiotic relationship happening with place and bodies, right? Very interesting. Also, place gathers different bodies, experiences, histories, language, and then places them together in this kind of neat puzzle, this neat kind of array, this cornucopia of culture and people with certain boundaries. So again, talking about UNF. UNF brings people from various class groups, various countries, various racial groups, various regions, and now they're together. These people have different histories, some speak different languages, but they're together in this place, on this campus for something. Usually it's to graduate. So they're holding them here so they learn something and they graduate. But even though they're here, there's still these small little boundaries between people. Sometimes they may cross over, but people are here, and then you may have people of various racial groups as freshmen. So there's boundaries around freshmen, and then as sophomores, and there's boundaries around being a sophomore and a junior, boundaries around that, and a senior, boundaries around that. Or if you play football, there's boundaries around that. Or if you are in the band, boundaries around that. Or if you're a bio major, there's boundaries. Or if you're a English major, boundaries, or computer science, whatever. So there's still certain boundaries even within this place, this diverse, dynamic, place. And so places are qualified by their own contents and by the ways in which these contents are articulated. So people look at how others understand what makes up this place. UNF is qualified based on the students, the professors, the faculty, staff, the board, president. All of these things make up the quality of the place. If a lot of students didn't graduate UNF, if a lot of students didn't get good jobs after leaving UNF, if the professors are horrible at UNF, if there were not good experiences from people who work or go to school at UNF, the quality of the school and the representation of the school would plummet because of the contents that make up the place. So bodies and what bodies bring to place validate the place and qualify the place. And the quality of that place in turn should pour back into the bodies to bring more bodies. That's how place works. And so when we look at place, now taking place and putting it in sociology, and then when we do that, then we're going to take it and add on this racialized component to it, this notion of Black placemaking. So sociologist Thomas Gearin, again, he was the one who, this was in his piece, a space for place in sociology. One of my favorite pieces on place, probably because I study place and I'm a sociologist, but a space for place in sociology.
He says a spot in the universe becomes a place only when it enscones history or utopia, danger or security, identity or memory. These are the things that help to make a place valuable. When it has a history, a utopia, a danger to it, a security to it, and people can identify with it. And all of these things can be applied to UNF or even Jacksonville or wherever you're from. You think of how people got to wherever city you come from. How do people live and enjoy living there? What is great about it? Is it near the beach? Is it the weather? Is it the food? Is it something that makes it a utopia? Is it the culture? Why do people run away from it? Is it dangerous? Is it crime? Is it the poor weather? How is it secured? How is it maintained? And then how do people identify? If you're from Alabama, how do people identify? Roll Tide. You hear that everywhere. If you're from Jacksonville, how do people identify? Duval. Or wherever you're from. So there are certain identities, right? Characteristics that we apply to that place. And you identify with that as something that lets people know this is where I'm from. This is what's important to me. This is why this place is important. And let me show you through some kind of action, some kind of hand signal, some kind of call, or something. This is what makes place. And so we ignore the authors of Black Placemaking Celebration, Celebration Play and Poetry by Zandria Robinson and Marcus Hunter. And so in writing this, they say we ignore neither assaults on Black placemaking from the outside, as in lethal policing and destructive urban planning, nor internal dangers, such as homophobia, harassment, and homicide. They say instead we highlight how Black people make places amidst and in spite of those realities. Black placemaking refers to the ways that urban Black Americans create sites of endurance, belonging, and resistance. So what they're arguing is that in the context of placemaking, most times when people discuss race and then inadvertently place, because it's rare that people kind of explicitly talk about place, but inadvertently they talk about race and then place, it's always from this, what's the time? So it's this deficit model. It's the model of danger, of hurt, of frustration, of anger, of survival. Ultimately, what they're saying, every time you talk about Black people, somebody getting killed, somebody getting shot, somebody on drugs, somebody family disrupted. What Robinson and Hunter are saying is that while there are issues of homophobia, homonegativity, harassment, homicide within Black places, for sure, we're not going to deny issues related to lethal policing, police brutality, urban planning, gentrification, and poverty. Yeah, these things absolutely happen. We're not going to focus on that because that is not the singular experiences of Black people in place. When we intersect race and place, those are not the only results. Those are just some results. And so we choose to look at how, when you intersect race and place, you get sites of endurance, you get sites of beauty, you get sites of play, creativity, belonging, resistance, community, unity, revolution, power, friendships, love, sex, all of these ideas and aspects and components of a full and complete life you can have and Black people have within a place. And it's not just what you may see in the mainstream media. And they use this to help create this idea of Black placemaking. Again, the reason why the Black placemaking is significant is because it is resisting the racism within the larger context of placemaking. So it is purposefully used to help expand place and race to include all of the dynamics of what it means to be Black in a place like the United States, in a place like the United States, and then sub aspects of the United States in rural areas and urban areas and the South and the North and the West, wherever. And that's why this piece is very, very important. Let's see. So, Black placemaking is a framework that helps us to understand the way place also provides not only this meaning of a much more dynamic Black life, but it also helps us to understand the disadvantages, the stigmas that exist in Black life. And then when we do that, we can now apply this framework to other people. Now you don't have to just have a Black placemaking. You can have a poor placemaking, Native American placemaking, an immigrant placemaking, mentally ill placemaking, HIV and AIDS placemaking, because all of these groups have to find meaning in hostile spaces. That's what Black placemaking does. It allows for people to find meaning, both positive and negative, both the good, the bad, and the ugly, in the midst of sometimes hostile spaces. And Black people aren't the only people that have to do that. But oftentimes what we find is within theories, within movements, things like that, what you find is you typically find out of race comes out of race comes the momentum for other types of movements. Now, I'm not saying it always happens that way, but sometimes, generally, right, that's what happens. And so the argument is that if we can cultivate this Black placemaking framework, now we can take this and now we can apply it to so many other people. A woman's placemaking. So many different types of people that can help make sense of their spaces. And so the concept and the idea of Black placemaking looks to counter the scholarship and looks to contribute to the negative portrayals of Black neighborhoods, whether you're talking about in scholarship or in media, cinema, Hollywood, music, whatever. Just like in Hollywood, for a long time in the 1980s and even the 1990s, all the research on Black people was Black people in the hood, Black people in the ghetto, poor, the underclass, the underprivileged. Look at these poor Black people. We need to help them. And it's not always like that. In fact, only 1/4 of, 25%, which is still more than the larger society in terms of demographics, live below the poverty line. Now, that's still a lot. It shouldn't be that much, but that means 75% live above the poverty line. So it's not necessarily that it is these places of just that are destitute and demolished. And so it counters that scholarship and then contributes to having new conversations around that scholarship. Even if we're all going to talk about poor people, people in poverty, people in the ghetto, right? We can also talk about what is being done to help bring value, to help bring unity. How do these people take these spaces and take these places and bring identity to it and bring life to it? Because it happens all the time. That's why gentrification occurs. You stick a bunch of poor people, particularly poor Black people in a certain area, they build it up, they make it valuable, and then the people outside, typically white middle-class people outside, then say, oh, I want to go back there again. So then they come back, prices go up, investments go up, and then those people who made that thing cool and valuable, now they got to move out. So there's value where there are poor Black people, poor minorities, places that are seen as invaluable. Places that become spaces that now these people make places again. And so this concept of Black placemaking is a way of, turning around these negative portrayals without losing sight of the relationship between structures and agencies, between domination and resistance. So they're not saying, oh, well, we don't want to talk about crime. We don't want to talk about poverty. We don't want to talk about gentrification. Oh, no, we will. We will absolutely talk about structure and agency, systemic racism and then personal consequence. We're going to talk about all of these things, but we're also going to include a much more dynamic and full conversation that gives a much better understanding of how the intersection of race and place plays out in the experiences of Black people and then eventually people of various groups. And so essentially what we see is placemaking versus Black placemaking. You see placemaking versus Black placemaking. So placemaking is the simple idea that people transform the places which we find ourselves into, which we find ourselves in. Okay. So people transform these places. That's what placemaking is. Wherever they are, they do what is necessary to create and add value to that place. Black placemaking says that individual outcomes are tied to the well-being of the group that bind them economically and politically, even as internal practices of marginalization can threaten unity. So even though these people are not, even though within a place you have class stratification, you have gender stratification, you have sexual stratification, place stratification. With Black people generally, because Black people of various groups tend to have what's called a linked fate, and they talked about that in the reading, a linked fate, and that they have to be together anyway, because we all Black, whether you're rich or poor. That's not what's going to be asked of you if you get pulled over by the police. The first thing they're going to see is this one thing. If a young boy is in a classroom with a teacher that don't like Black kids, they're not going to ask him, how much did your parents make? That will determine how I treat you, not necessarily. And so because generally Black people have this understanding that regardless of my class status, while class can mitigate some aspects of racism, it's not going to mitigate all of it. And so there is this kind of unity and regard that Black people have for a place that the larger population may not have for a place because of the conditions in which Black people have to live and navigate in the United States. Placemaking assumes human competence, which is often not an assumption granted to Black urban residents. So generally, if a white person is seen in a place, there is this automatic idea that place is safe, secure, it's okay. May not, there's a general assumption of competence in safety, in whiteness. I mean, if we're just honest, most white people, and then even just most people, or a lot of people, may not feel uncomfortable around white people or in white spaces, even though the crime statistics show that white and Black people commit crimes at roughly the same level. I think it's only like a couple of percentage points between them, but it's roughly the same. So people talk about Black on Black crime, white on white crime and all that. No, people just commit crimes. But again, because of race, we have this assumption of human competency and human decency that seems to be inherent in white people, that Black people don't get that kind of preconceived idea. So Black placemaking seeks to analyze and recover the agency of urban Blacks often lost in conventional perspectives. So these stereotypes. And it is a framework to help build that humanity back into them. Because with conventional perspectives, with traditional ideas, with traditionally racist ideas, they don't automatically have that assumption of decency that oftentimes people of other racial groups, particularly white people, it's oftentimes assumed. And then placemaking recognizes that race and racism, especially race and racism is manifested in residential segregation, which begets Black political consciousness and offers opportunities to create new sites of gathering. So as we move forward into placemaking, adding that Black placemaking piece allows for us to see and to recognize that place leads to, and placemaking leads to residential segregation. But that residential segregation then typically refers to or makes Black political consciousness consequential. Now we have to be able to rally around this type of political or social identity and idea to help us gain what was either taken away or never given to us at all. So Black placemaking looks at the ability of these people in these residents in these areas to shift oppressive regimes, to shift oppressive tactics, to shift the oppression that many times they live under into areas and sites and spaces and places of play and pleasure and celebration and politics and beauty and culture and ideas and vibrance. And this is what place and Black placemaking does, changes the narrative. Okay, so they end this piece, which I think is really interesting, with this poem by Gwendolyn Brooks. I think Gwendolyn Bennett was in the Harlem Renaissance. So yeah, this would be Gwendolyn Brooks from the Black Arts Movement. And the poem says, Blackness is a title, is a preoccupation, is a commitment. Blacks ought to comprehend and in which you ought to perceive your glory. The word Black has geographic power, pulls everybody in. Blacks here, there, Blacks wherever they may be. And I think this is significant and powerful to end this lecture here, because that's where Ta-Nehisi Coates' Blacks Here, There, Everywhere, I believe was the title of the piece, that provided the foundation for his framework and his theoretical framework on race. So that's where we started. And this notion of Blacks here, there, everywhere, this placing of Black people and Black bodies and the value that it brings is also ended right here with Zandria Robinson and Marcus Hunter's work. Also, so I want you to read this poem, right? Then there's another piece, two of them. I'm not going to read them out loud right now, but I want you to read them. One is called The South by Emma Lazarus. I don't know if she was born 1849 to 1887. I'm not sure if that was like her born and death, or it was just another significance of that time. But Emma Lazarus, if I'm not mistaken, more than likely is white. Strange Fruit by Billie Holiday. Some of you may know this piece, some of you may not. Billie Holiday was a jazz singer, and Strange Fruit was a piece that she wrote. No, sorry, she sang it. It was written by a Jewish man named Abel Meerpool, I believe. And Abel Meerpool wrote this piece after he witnessed the lynching in the South. He came to the South and saw, I think he either witnessed the lynching or he may have like seen it on the news or something. But he saw it. He saw lynching occur, and it prompted him to write this poem, and he called it Strange Fruit. And then Billie Holiday read the poem. And then Billie Holiday was also traveling in the South. And as she was traveling in the South, she recognized or saw a lynching. She saw a man hanging from a tree. And so it caused her and it influenced her and her, you know, her consciousness, her Black consciousness, her political consciousness. And she recorded this song called Strange Fruit, and it became a very popular song, especially up north. And in the South, oftentimes she was uh, arrested or violently thrown out of clubs where she sang for singing this song, because people in the South didn't want to hear this. And a lot of her audience, well, she had audience white and Black. So read The South by Emma Lazarus, and then read Strange Fruit by Billie Holiday. All right. So with that said, have a great week. Have a great day, whatever day you're seeing this, whatever day you're watching this. If it's on a Friday, then have a great weekend. And you'll see me later, and hopefully I'll see you in the office hours. Also, please keep in mind that all assignments are due, the assignments, unless I otherwise stated, the assignments are due the Sunday after I've given you that assignment, okay? So just keep that in mind. If I say something or I make a mistake on the lecture video, keep in mind that all assignments are due the Sunday after I give it. So get your information on Monday with your assignments, and then I'll say it on the PowerPoint. You get your information, your assignments, and then you have until that following Sunday to complete it. Okay. If I make a mistake on the lecture video, sorry. I just want to make sure that I say that here so that you understand I'm saying it here. Also, it will be on your PowerPoint. It's on the syllabus. It's on the Canvas. All those places. That is consistent for most of your assignments, unless it's an exam or, you know, something else, or like your final paper, those big ticket items, regular assignments, discussion boards, all of that, given on Monday, do the next Sunday. Okay, everybody understand? Good.